throughout my life, spending a significant amount of time debating and dialoguing with atheists, I've noticed a lot of really strong similarities in how they tend to argue and the way that they tend to think. They have put the blinders on themselves as far as evidence goes.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Marty McLain along with
Paul Price.
And we are once again here with the Uncensored Pilgrims podcast. Thank you for joining us. And I know that this week actually, a few days ago, Paul had a debate online with a gentleman who represented an atheist point of view. And so we figured today we would talk about atheism. We're going to talk about what it is to have faith and what it is that atheists struggle with.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about some quotes from some famous atheists. But if you did not watch that debate the other night, you need to go watch that. You can find it at the YouTube channel Standing for Truth.
Yep.
I think Paul did a fantastic job. He looked really great, had hair product.
I had hair product on, so I was ready to go.
He was as kept as I've ever seen him. I mean, he doesn't look that good at church.
Yeah.
So anyway, you'll be delighted to see Paul. And like I say, he did a great job. But I'm going to turn it over to Paul and let him kind of do I don't know, you want to call this a debriefing?
Yeah, that'd be fun. And
okay.
Was this the first debate you ever watched, Marty?
I think like that it was. I mean, I've seen people, obviously, political debates. I've seen a lot of those. But as far as something like this,
yeah.
I don't remember one that I've watched to the extent that I watched that. It was very informative. I thought it was great.
Yeah. I had a great time doing it. It is the first time I've ever debated the existence of God. You know, I went on to Donnie's channel. Donnie's a really cool guy, and he's doing a lot of apologetics work. He does almost all his channel is devoted to debates. If not debate, then he's having like a lot of creation science guys come on, and that's how I got connected up with him.
Okay.
Originally, it was through the creation science aspect.
Right, and he does a good job moderating. He's very professional, and
he's impartial. He doesn't jump in and try to argue in the debate when he's the moderator or anything like that.
Right.
So
it's very good to watch. It's a lot of good information, and like I say, Paul did a fantastic job, and I like the way that you were kind, you were direct, and you had your facts together, and you just presented things in a very informative fashion.
Yeah.
I don't say it was emotionless, but it was not. There was no vitriol. There was no yelling or anything like that. It was just done in a very conversational tone, which allowed people to hear what you were actually saying and be able to take it in apart from any over emotional content.
Yes, yeah, and the seeds of that debate or the comments that I made, though, it really goes back to an article that I wrote for creation.com several years ago called The Detective Approach. I believe the URL is creation.com/detective-approach.
Yeah, there's a guy.
I believe so.
There's actually a guy that does that. That's an apologetics guy. I can't think of his name right now.
His name's J. Werner Wallace.
That's it. There we go. Yes.
Yeah. He's I love his book. I've got it on the bookshelf back there behind us. And
okay.
I've definitely been influenced by him. I love the show Columbo. I think we talked about that before. I love Columbo.
Oh yeah.
That kind of influenced me there with the article. But the whole point of the article was, throughout my life, spending a significant amount of time debating and dialoguing with atheists, I've noticed a lot of really strong similarities in how they tend to argue and the way that they tend to think.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what inspired me to write that article, is to explain to people why it's so difficult to get through to atheists.
Yeah.
And it's really because they have put the blinders on themselves as far as evidence goes. They in their own mind, they think that they don't have or that they think that they're looking for evidence and that they can't find any. And that's what they've convinced themselves of.
Okay.
But in reality, what they've done is that they have set up their worldview in such a way that no evidence for God is possible in principle. And that's what makes it so difficult to reach them, is that no matter what you present to them, it would never count in their mind as evidence for God.
They're just going to discount.
Because they have defined God out of existence. It's not that God doesn't exist to them because of a lack of evidence. It's because of the fact that they have defined him out of existence. It's impossible for God to exist in their mind. Because imagine, this is what it boils down to. They typically will say, well, you're using God of the gaps. Have you heard that claim? God of the gaps?
I heard y'all that was mentioned in y'all's debate.
Well, I said naturalism of the gaps, actually, in the debate, which is kind of the converse of that. But what they always like to claim about believers is that they claim we only believe in God because there are things that science can't explain.
Right.
And so we like to just fill in God into those gaps in our scientific knowledge. So that's why it's called God of the gaps.
That makes sense from their point of view.
And every time we learn something new, according to them, the gaps get just a little bit smaller, and so there's less room for God.
So the more we learn, we'll have less and less capacity for faith or a desire for faith.
There will be less and less room for us to pretend in their mind that God is the reason for something.
Wow.
That's how they think. And so when you say, look, the origin of life, for example, there's no way that life could come about by pure chance.
Right.
Well, what they will turn around and do when you present that evidence is that they'll say, well, we don't know how life came about, but one day science will tell us you can't say God did it. God did it is not a scientific answer. That's what they'll say.
Okay.
Because they've defined science in terms of naturalism. That's not how it started out. Science was founded by Bible-believing Christians who certainly did not reject the idea of God, and they didn't reject the idea of miracles.
Right.
But they still believed in science, and the reason is because of what I brought up in the debate. For those of you that didn't see the debate, I used 3 pieces of evidence. The first was the universe. The second was the uniformity of nature. And the third was fulfilled prophecy. And the uniformity of nature is what makes science possible. Because science is built upon inductive reasoning. It's built upon drawing a probabilistic universal belief based on particular experiences that we have. That's what an experiment is. So when we do experiments and we find that, we can see how quickly objects accelerate to the Earth, and we do that over and over, and we become more and more convinced that there's a law there, the law of gravity.
Right.
But really, what I brought out in the debate is that it's only the existence of God as our sustainer that even makes that reasoning work. Because in a world with no creator and in a world with no cosmic authority over it, it's a world of chaos and randomness. There is no basis for thinking that laws could exist or that the future is going to be anything like the past. Because why would it be? There's no, it's just like political anarchy. In political anarchy, what reason do you have to think that, the boundaries of entities that you know today are going to stay right where they are? Like, if there were no United States government and there were no state of Georgia or state of Kentucky, state of Tennessee government, why would you believe that what we call the political borders of those areas would stay the same? Wouldn't it just change according to the whims of everybody living? Like maybe somebody's got a little bit more power one day so on and so forth, it's all anarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anything could be in flux.
So if you're an atheist, you should not be able to say there are laws,
You shouldn't.
even laws of nature.
You can certainly claim it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make sense within that worldview, because within
Who
that,
gives the law? There's got to be a
because
lawgiver,
exactly, every law has a lawgiver.
Right?
No lawgiver,
No law.
no law. It's that simple, and that is why the science was birthed out of a rigidly monotheistic Christian worldview, and it just doesn't make sense to do. If you have a chaotic worldview with no authority in the universe to keep things in line, you wouldn't expect to see laws that are predictable. You wouldn't
Right.
expect that matter and energy and chemistry and physics would all be really well predictable. You would expect the opposite.
Yeah, it's interesting that that I did the documentary 10 years ago, the Nord, and over in the Scandinavian countries, and the majority of the people that I would speak to, when I say, do you believe in God? They'd say no, and when I say, well, what do you believe in? They say, I believe in science.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Nacho Libre's friend Steven said?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, I don't believe in God. I believe in science.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they would say that I believe in science. And they, one guy said, I have no need for a God. And so you have people that will not believe in God, but yet they want to believe in the consistency of science and in the laws of science.
Mm-hmm. Now, Nacho Libre taught us something about what's inside a man. Do you remember that? The center of a man?
Yeah, it's his nucleus. And he was looking for the super eagle powers, eagle egg powers.
Yes, in the center of the man is the nucleus.
Yes, and sometimes that man will wear stretchy pants. At least that's what he told Chancho or whatever his name was. Okay, yeah. Speaking of that, we'll talk about, Jack Black, who played Nacho Libre. He is actually a well-known atheist.
Yeah.
So, Jack Black, if you're listening out there in the podcast universe. This is for you, man.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, okay? With knowing how to relate to an atheist.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you ever, if you're going through a difficulty in life and you need some answers, you need some encouragement, you need somebody to help you make it, would you go to an atheist for that type of support and that type of help?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question because every situation is different. And obviously, as a believer, as Christians, we tend to want to go to other believers who share our worldview and our faith.
What would an atheist have to offer?
Well, that's the thing, is that
would there be any outside help?
In the atheist mind, they think that atheism provides some kind of comfort and fulfillment in life because to their mind, they're the truth believers and we're the ones that believe in fantasy. So in their own minds, they would think that. But the reality is the atheist worldview provides no comfort to anyone because there's no hope in it.
There is no hope.
And they will dance around that when you try to bring that up. Now, that wasn't an argument I used in the debate that I just did. I didn't go that route with it. But the truth is, there is no hope in that worldview. And when you bring that up, they will try to dance around it and they'll say, well, there's hope because you can make the world a better place for your offspring, and for your children and your children's children. That's what they'll try to say. But the two problems with that are, one, they have no objective standard for saying anything is better in the first place because there's no objective standard of good. So calling anything better is just an arbitrary statement for them. It doesn't really have any objective meaning. But the other problem with it is that it's just simply wrong. We cannot make the world a better place. Number one, because in an atheist worldview, free will is impossible. And this is something you and I can talk about here because it's interesting in this debate, this particular atheist, Taylor, who I got a good feeling about in terms of, he was very cordial and
He's very respectful.
Respectful. He didn't engage in name calling or anything like that. But for whatever reason, it was very clear that the issue of free will was very. He kept bringing it up over and over in the debate. We weren't debating free will, but I could tell for some reason that was something that was important to him.
Right.
And it was something he brought up in his statements. But for an atheist, there cannot be free will because the atheist worldview is intrinsically materialistic, meaning they only accept that physical things exist. They don't accept any spiritual reality.
Okay.
So some of them deceive themselves about it. Now, Taylor, to his credit, was upfront about realizing that he could not possibly have free will in his own worldview. So he claimed that he didn't believe in free will.
All right.
But then he showed up to a debate. And that's weird because he doesn't believe that he or I have the freedom to do anything.
Okay.
Right? So why would he show up to a debate? That's confusing in and of itself because to debate something is inherently the idea that you're saying we are two rational beings who have the freedom to alter our views based on something called reason. Mm-hmm. But in his worldview, the only thing that controls our views is chemistry and physics.
Man, you know how many people failed chemistry and physics?
I almost failed chemistry in high school because I took an advanced chemistry class and I shouldn't have done that. I just can't stand chemistry.
Yeah, I didn't like chemistry either. Well, then let me ask you this, okay? So there's really not. With being a Christian, we believe that there is outside help.
Yes.
From our Creator. There's the presence of the Holy Spirit. We've got the guidance of God's Word. Mm-hmm. We believe that God's the creator and sustainer of life, the giver of eternal life. So we feel like there's a lot of help and a lot of hope that we can offer people. And so that's why, we want to give spiritual advice or spiritual comfort, spiritual direction for people because we really feel like we got what people need.
Yeah.
Okay? But could you imagine having a chaplain who's an atheist?
I wouldn't want to speak to that chaplain. I mean, at least not in time of need.
Yes, but
because what do they have to offer?
I don't think they have anything. But Harvard University, their new chief chaplain is an atheist. His name is Greg Epstein. And here's what it says about him in this article I've got, written by Maya Yang. Okay. It says, quote, Harvard University, originally founded with a mission to educate clergymen in order to minister to New England's early Puritan colonists, has a new chief chaplain. His name is Greg Epstein, and he is an atheist. Epstein, author of Good Without God, What a Billion Non-Religious People Do Believe, has been the university's humanist chaplain since 2005, before being unanimously elected by his fellow campus chaplains as the University Chaplains Organization's new president. That's according to the New York Times. Mm-hmm. Now, could you imagine this guy's an atheist, and you expect a chaplain to give you spiritual advice, spiritual comfort, spiritual help, but yet he does not even believe in anything spiritual?
Yeah, and I think anybody who's at all familiar with the state of affairs at modern-day Ivy League schools wouldn't be probably in the least surprised.
Would you say it's kind of like poison ivy?
Yeah, spiritual poison ivy, because they've all capitulated to extreme liberalism in every possible way. So, this is just another outworking of that. And
is atheism, is humanism? It's a belief system, right?
It is absolutely it's in fact I think I mentioned in one of our very first episodes, if not our first episode, we read out of the Humanist Manifesto.
That's right.
And in that early edition of the Humanist Manifesto, they admitted that humanism was a religion.
Right.
So,
Well, here's something I've got for you. Now think about this. Here's a newspaper article. Actually, it's from Fox. It says State Department won't tell congressional Republicans where atheist grant money is going. GOP threatens to subpoena. Now, the State Department will not tell the congressional Republicans which atheist organizations they are giving religious freedom grants to. So there are these religious freedom grants that are given to other countries to help people of faith in their quest to be able to live out that faith where they are in these countries. And so here's what this one article says. It says Republican lawmakers are questioning the constitutionality of the Biden State Department's funding program to promote the spread of atheism and humanism internationally under the guise of religious freedom. So they are using the funds meant to promote religious freedom in order to promote atheism and humanism. It says a group of 15 GOP members of Congress sent a letter to President Biden and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken last month seeking information about a State Department funding program that would grant awards up to $500,000 to organizations committed to the practice and spread of atheism and humanism, namely in South Central Asia and in the Middle East and North Africa. The legislators point out that both atheism and humanism, quote, are official belief systems, unquote, and that, quote, any such program for any religiously identifiable group in the United States would be unconstitutional, unquote. The lawmakers argued that efforts to spread these anti-Christian beliefs do not promote religious freedom and that the grant programs, like others we have reviewed, prioritizes atheists and humanists above all other potential recipients. Not only does such a priority violate both the Establishment and Free Exercise clauses, but also the No Religious Test clause of Article 6 of our nation's Constitution, the letter states.
Yeah, but
so what do you think about that?
The government that we are under doesn't even hardly pretend to have any real respect for the Constitution, do they? I mean, they're going to do what they think they can get away with doing. They don't.
So using money that's supposed to be used to promote religious freedom, instead they're giving it to atheist and humanist organizations.
Yeah, I don't believe that our government should be involved with religion in any way, even in the quote unquote freedom of religion. That's what does the United States government have to do with giving people who don't live in the United States religious freedom?
Yeah,
I don't understand the concept of that. Our government is supposed to be concerned with our affairs, and I'm not a big proponent of foreign aid in general.
Yes, got a lot going to Ukraine right now.
I'm not a big proponent of that at all, and I think a lot of money is being not only wasted, but it's probably being laundered and used corruptly under the guise of aid of various kinds.
Yes. So
I'm not in favor of it. Even if it were entirely on the up and up and constitutional, I would still not be in favor of it. But I think there's no question that it's also unconstitutional.
Well, I think when you have people in our government purposely trying to promote atheism and humanism in different parts of the world, I think that is indicative of a much greater problem.
Well, they obviously don't agree with what our founding fathers wrote, which is that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
So what does an atheist do when it comes to natural law?
They'll do the same thing with it that they do with ethics in general. For them, ethics is natural law. They just try to arbitrarily say what is good and what isn't good. Most of them will say, well, whatever causes the least suffering, that's the definition of good. But the problem there is, whose suffering are we talking about? Are we talking about the suffering of animals or the suffering of humans? And if we're talking about the suffering of humans, are we talking about average suffering or absolute? There are so many problems with that because the way that it's just entirely arbitrary. And ultimately it comes down to one thing. Who's got the most guns?
Right.
Because that person can then be the one who decides what the definition of good is, right?
And then it becomes natural just to do what the person who has the most power says to do.
Yeah. So it devolves into might makes right. No matter how much they try to claim that you can be good without God, You can't be good if you, I mean, you can't be good if you have no free will, can you?
Right.
If you have no free will, you can only do what you are forced to do by things outside your control.
So instead of there being something like, let me read this. Natural law is a theory in ethics and philosophy that says that human beings possess intrinsic values that govern their reasoning and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Natural law maintains that these rules of right and wrong are inherent in people and not created by society or court judges.
Yeah, but how can they be inherent without God?
Exactly.
God has to be the foundation of natural law.
So there's a big issue when you try to approach human rights.
Yeah.
If you don't have a concept of God, right?
Big problem.
Because
what is unique about a human?
Exactly.
And really, here's an even deeper philosophical problem. What is it that ultimately makes you a different thing or object than me? What is it? Is it the fact that there happens to be some air between us? Is that why you are a separate thing than me?
See, it's another one of these questions. I don't know if you want me to answer or not.
Well, I do, because this is a problem for any atheistic worldview, because, well, not any technically, but the vast majority of atheists are materialists, like I said, which means that they are monists. And that means that they believe all of reality is one substance, one thing. And that's the physical thing. They're as a Christian, we're dualists. We believe in matter, but we also believe in the spiritual realm.
Right.
So the reason you and I are different is because you have a soul that is different than my soul.
Correct.
Completely separate. If you take the soul away, you're a bag of
I'm a meat
atom,
suit.
a meat suit. But
I prefer meat suit.
okay, you can say that, but why, my leg is connected to the rest of my body using atoms and molecules.
Right.
Well, you and I are actually connected with atoms and molecules right now. It's just that we're connected by air molecules, right?
Okay.
So do you see what I'm getting at? Do you see how arbitrary it is? If all you believe is atoms and molecules, then everything is really one.
Yeah.
One thing. One big thing. The universe is one thing. And to argue that you're a thing and I'm a thing, where do you get that from?
Okay.
It's totally arbitrary.
Well, let me run something by you.
Maybe
real
that's a
quick.
little too philosophical, but that's a huge problem for them because they want to act like their worldview is fundamentally unlivable. The things that they claim to believe, they cannot live in accordance with that belief because it's just absurd. To live thinking that you are just a cog in the machine of the universe, that's unlivable.
Yeah, that's a terrible way.
Nobody
to live.
lives according to
And
that.
I feel sorry for atheists because just thinking about the loneliness that you would have to have that type of mindset and the purpose, lack of purpose or lack of meaning or So what's the significance of my having lived?
Yeah.
What if I'm just a meat suit or material,
There are rock slides all the time, right? Probably every day somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And one rock will probably hit the ground and bust into smaller pieces, right?
Correct.
Is that a tragedy when that happens? If a rock busts into smaller pieces? I wouldn't call that a tragedy.
Well, it depends on if you're Dwayne Johnson.
The Rock.
That's right, man.
That might be a tragedy.
I didn't
Depending on
realize
how you
his
feel
dad was
about
Rocky
him.
Johnson, the wrestler. I used to watch.
Really?
Yeah, I used to watch his dad wrestle. He was.
So is that why he's called The Rock? Because his dad was called Rocky?
That's all I can figure. Rocky Johnson is his. If I've read right, that is his dad. I used to watch his dad.
All right.
Rocky Johnson. He was a good wrestler.
You're going over my head now.
I'm going way back.
Yeah.
There was a time when The Rock was a pebble. Not going that far back, but I've got something. What I want to do in just a second. I'm gonna read you some quotes from some famous atheists, and these are going to be what you just said, hot takes.
Okay.
You have not. I've not shared.
I
these
haven't heard these
quotes,
before, right?
And I want your your initial reaction to what these people are saying. All right, Paul. Here we go. I'm going to start out with. young Harry Potter, also known as Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Okay? Here's what he says. He's an atheist, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he said he's agnostic, leaning toward atheism.
Wonder
All
what
right.
that means exactly.
All right? He says, quote, I don't expect there to be a God and an afterlife. I would be pleasantly surprised if there was.
Okay.
So what would you say to somebody like that? I mean, what does that convey? As an atheist, that doesn't really convey he's hardcore, right?
Well, hard to tell. I mean, the guy that I debated. I mean, if you're willing to go in front of an audience and debate atheism,
Mm-hmm.
to me that's pretty hardcore.
Okay.
And the guy that I debated, Taylor, he said the same thing. He said it would be nice if there was a God.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
So is there a yearning within them?
there's certainly a yearning because everyone has that yearning.
Okay, God's put eternity within
So
our hearts,
yeah,
right?
He's put eternity within our hearts, but they convince themselves that they're the rational ones because they're denying that.
Okay.
But so first of all, it's interesting that he said that because the vast majority of atheists, at least when you're debating them, the difference between atheism and agnosticism is nothing,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not willing to say God does not exist. They're willing. The only thing they want to say is that they don't have a belief in God because there's insufficient evidence.
Okay.
So they're not willing to claim that there is no God. Most of them, a few of them will, but they'll say, I just don't have a belief.
Okay.
One way or another, I don't have a belief.
All right.
Because they don't want to have a burden of proof. Now, it doesn't work like that, but that's the way they try to play it. But him saying, well, I'm an agnostic leaning towards an atheist, I assume that means he's saying
He's getting more settled that there is no God.
he's getting settled that he's ready to be making a positive claim that there is no God rather than just saying that he has no claim.
Right.
But put him in a debate and we'll see if he holds to that or not. But, anybody that says that well, if it turns out that there is, I'll be pleasantly surprised.
No, he won't be pleasantly surprised.
I've got news for you. It's not going to be a pleasant surprise.
No, it's going to be a horror show.
And so, if you think there's some chance that God exists, I would urge you to seek Him now, not after you're dead.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that.
Okay, have you ever heard of Emma Thompson?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
Now hold on, am I getting confused? Isn't that the one that plays Hermione?
Her what?
Hermione? You just talked about.
She is in. Isn't she?
You just talked about Harry Potter, right?
Yes.
So isn't Emma Thompson?
I've never seen any of the Harry Potter.
Unless I'm getting
I was in
that
my 30s, my mama wouldn't let me.
because of all that witchcraft.
Yeah, I don't watch it.
Well,
I'm not a Harry Potter fan. I don't support Harry Potter.
Well, I've watched all of the movies, and I got to say, it's no Lord of the Rings.
But I
It's
did.
no Lord
But I
of the
did ride
Rings.
the Harry Potter ride at Universal. And
Okay.
I don't think I'd do it again.
Did you get bewitched by anything?
It's a creepy place, man. You go, you don't even know it's there, and then all of a sudden you go through this door, and there it is, man.
Huh.
I just anyway. So
what does she have to
She's
say?
known for Sense and Sensibility. Jane
Okay.
Austen. Also, as I like to call it, Sense and Senselessness. If you've had to watch the movie with your wife.
Not yet, but I'm
Okay.
sure the day will come.
Well, here's what this article says. Says she explained that she calls herself an atheist despite believing in the importance of a spiritual life.
Okay.
Okay, largely because of the oppression caused by organized religions.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, here's what she says. The reason that I am an atheist insofar as the world religions that we have is because I have seen them oppress so many women for so long. So to me, religion is the history of the oppression of women.
Yeah. So obviously she's coming at it from a feminist perspective.
Well, you'd think she would be a Wiccan, wouldn't you?
Well, she probably would be 100% open to that. Many atheists are very open to pagan stuff, So wouldn't surprise me, that there would be crossover. But, this is something that is unfashionable in our time, is to believe that there could be different roles for men and women in the family or
Right.
in society.
Right.
And so any type of belief that there might be any different role there is then called oppression by
Right.
definition.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying there hasn't been real oppression, because
Sure.
there has.
Sure.
But what they want to call oppression is simply any belief that there would be any difference of roles
Yeah, but
between men and
it's
women.
interesting she would bring up her feminism, or
Yeah.
leaning that as part of the motivation for her being an atheist.
Yeah, so she's putting her belief in feminism as the greatest authority, and she's subjugating God to that. So basically, she's saying, I'm not willing to believe in any God who disagrees with me about the role of women.
And it's the old patriarchal
Yeah.
oppression thing.
Right.
Okay, now here's another guy, Javier Bardem. You ever heard of him? He was in Dune, Skyfall. Now I watched Dune. I felt like I just felt like I was in a sandy dystopian nightmare. When
I have to
watched
be
that movie.
honest, I've never seen it.
Don't see it. Dune is done.
Back in the 90s, there was a very famous series of games that I enjoyed and still occasionally will play to this day,
Okay.
called Command and Conquer.
Okay.
And that was made by a company, Westwood Studios. And I think, if I remember right, their first strategy game they made was Dune.
Dune.
But
Okay.
it was based on this sandy world where you have to go and collect this
It is a sandy
resource
world.
called
It's just-
spice.
and I hate sand at the beach.
Ah,
Yeah, it's not good.
but
Okay.
no, that's about all I know about
So here's
him.
what he said in a 2012 GQ cover story. It says he spoke briefly about his faith. Now, I got to get your feedback on this
Yeah.
one, okay?
Yeah.
He said, quote, I've always said that I don't believe in God. I believe in Al Pacino.
What?
Yeah, the Godfather.
Oh, that's a joke.
No, I don't know.
Because he says the Godfather. Okay.
Maybe that's...
That's
maybe,
just a joke.
Maybe that's,
He thinks he's being funny.
yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Al Pacino, okay? So I wonder what that does for him. Okay, so that's Javier Bardem. Now, Helen Mirren.
Okay. I recognize the name, but I can't
Actually,
remember what she's from.
her title is Dame Helen Mirren.
Okay.
Now, Dame is the feminine version of the Sir, of the Knight. It's a British title.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's one thing I can't understand. Okay, obviously it's a title of respect and honor.
Uh-huh.
But you ever watch Three Stooges?
Uh,
Come on, man.
a little bit.
Come on. Okay.
A little bit.
They always refer to the women as dames.
Yeah.
Hey, look at those dames.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a kind of a derogatory term, because they also toots. I think Curly would always call them toots.
It's all just very dated.
Anyway, but it's Dame Helen Mirren.
Okay.
She was in Red. She's in The Good Liar. There's a series currently out now called 1923. She's in that as well with Harrison Ford. But here's what she said, quote, I describe myself as a Christian who doesn't believe in God. I can't help being Christian because I was brought up in Britain, and the morality of Christianity is part of the fabric of this country. But I don't believe in God, but I do believe in treating other people as you'd want to be treated and being empathetic.
Yeah.
A Christian who doesn't believe in God. I mean, that's kind of
that's
the whole
redefining.
cultural...
That's just redefining what it means to be a Christian, obviously, and just trying to take and cherry pick what you want out of the Bible and ignore what you don't want.
Okay.
So, a lot of people do that. So, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, and I'll take that over somebody that wants to overturn Christian morality, sure, but believing in Christian morality is not going to get you saved.
Right.
And
so she likes certain aspects of Christianity.
But I think even
but she
Richard
doesn't-
Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
I think he has made similar statements before.
Really?
Yeah. I think he's called himself a cultural Christian before. Like I think he's gone on record saying that Christianity is good for society, even though he's obviously an atheist and doesn't
Right.
believe
And it is good for society.
It's obviously
It's
good for
great
society.
for society. It's great
So-
for families.
I mean, so yeah.
Okay, all right. Here is Brad Pitt. Now, Brad Pitt, I don't know if you know this, he's raised in Missouri. He was raised a Southern Baptist.
He's a Midwesterner,
Yeah,
like me.
There we are. You?
I'm from Missouri.
Are you from? Show me. Just kidding.
Yep.
All right.
I'm from Springfield, Missouri.
Springfield, Missouri. Okay, here's what...
That's why I don't say y'all.
What do you say, you guys?
You guys.
Oh, goodness. You guys. All right, so here's what he said. He said, quote, "I don't think anyone really knows. You'll either find out or not when you get there. Until then, there's no point in talking about it."
Yeah.
That was concerning the afterlife.
Well,
All right. Here's also what he said in People magazine. He said, quote, "In high school, I had a crisis of faith. I'd go to Christian revivals and be moved by the Holy Spirit, and I'd go to rock concerts and feel the same thing." And he continued, said, "It wasn't a loss of faith for me. It was a discovery of self."
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, it's not easy to say, well, I'll worry about it when I get there. If you're making millions of dollars and everybody in the world adores you, life's good.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll worry about it when I get there. I'm having a great time right now.
Life is,
Yeah.
But
I discovered myself.
But you know what's surprising me is you read some of these quotes. They think that, okay, if there is an afterlife, boy, I'm going to be pleasantly surprised. It's going to be great. It's
I can't wait to get there.
So I've got a great life now, and I'm gonna live the way I want to, do what I want to do. And if there is an afterlife, surely I'll make it to a good place.
Because I'm great, right? That's what they think.
And according to the Bible, it's not going to work like that. So
well, this is a good place. This is a good place to bring in, some of Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher. Pascal's wager. Have you heard Pascal's wager?
No. Hit me with it.
Pascal's wager, it's a lot of times misrepresented by people as a quote-unquote argument for God. It's not really an argument for the existence of God, but it's basically saying if you wager your life on God and you're right, you win everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you wager your life on atheism and you're right, you win nothing.
That's true.
So why would you not wager on God instead of wagering on atheism? You got everything to gain, and nothing to gain from atheism. So why would you?
Right.
Why wouldn't you seek? So he said, there's only two kinds of people who can truly be called wise. One, the people who have found God.
Mm-hmm.
Who are happy because they have found God.
Uh-huh.
Or two, they're miserable, but they're seeking God with all that they have. Those are the two types of people that can be called wise, according to Pascal.
Huh.
Because either you found God, or you know that you need God and you're seeking Him.
Mm-hmm.
But those who aren't seeking God, those are the ones that are not wise. Because even if there was only a 1% chance that God
why not
exists,
go for it?
Better
than nothing.
Why would you still not go for it? Because only God can offer you hope. Atheism cannot offer you hope.
Yeah, that's just like I said.
So let's say you thought, oh, well, there's a 90... I'm so convinced in atheism that I think it's that 99% sure that God doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about that 1%? That's your 1% chance of a ticket to eternity,
mm-hmm.
which is an infinite benefit.
Right.
So what is 1% of infinity? Still infinity.
Mm-hmm.
So the point isn't to try to argue for the existence of God. It is to show people how important God is and how it's not a thing where you'll just say, well, I'll find out when I get there.
Right.
It's too important for that.
Right.
Way too important for that.
And that's what they're doing. Hey, if it does happen, it'll be great. I'll be pleasantly surprised. No, you will not.
And what atheists will come back to you if you say that to them, a lot of them will say, well, okay, but how do you know which God? Yeah. What if you wager on the wrong God? Mm-hmm. And so that's where you have to say, okay, it's not just a gamble. You're not just rolling a die and okay, I'll pick that God. Mm-hmm. No, you can look at the evidence. It's not just a blind gamble. You look at the evidence, and only one God has given us good evidence.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
The God of the Bible. Hey, now you are a Lord of the Rings fan, right?
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
You know, I'd never read Lord of the Rings. Didn't know that much about it. I heard people talk about it until I saw the movie. You know, it came out 20 years ago.
Now you say the movie.
The first one.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings.
That would be the Fellowship of the Ring,
I didn't know what a Frodo was. I didn't know what the Shire was, or Gandalf, the
Okay.
white, the gray, the yellow.
Well, I'm like you. That was how I first got in. Like that's my first exposure to it. I didn't read the book first. I saw the movies first.
Well then, okay. Ian McLain
Yeah.
plays Gandalf. Does
Yes.
a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
but that was like 20 years ago. He was old then, and he's old now. How old is that man? He's old.
He's
He's old.
he's getting closer and closer to the age of Gandalf, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Well, here's the deal. Here's what he says about religion. He says, quote, I don't understand religion. I don't get it at all. I understand why people need it, but I think they're wrong. They don't. I do see that on a crudish level, when someone dies, it's nice and comforting to think that they're going to heaven and that they're going to be wrapped up and warm for eternity. But they're not. Heaven doesn't exist. If you just think about it for a minute, the person is dead, they're gone. They're not coming back. And you'll never see them again. And when you go, you'll never see anybody again. Just face it. I feel stronger because of it, knowing that I can't lean on religion to get through life. If you are leaning on it, you won't be living your life to the fullest.
Yeah. Well, this is a common sentiment among atheists is that they think they're the strong ones because they don't need a crutch.
And they view religion as a crutch.
Yes. So
And
I'm not sure, I'm not sure how, because I need a crutch.
I need a wheelchair. I need a walker, a scooter from the scooter store.
I think anybody who convinces themselves they don't need a crutch is in denial. So I believe he's in denial.
Yeah,
and it's a big problem. I mean, it's a big denial because
it's sad.
He's denying his need for a savior.
Yeah, and of course he is in the gay lifestyle. I mean, he came out 30 years ago as in that lifestyle, and so sometimes you have to, figure, wonder if his views on that somehow affects his views of Scripture, of the Bible.
Well, it would have to, wouldn't it?
I mean, think so. For him to live in congruence.
And once you've put yourself out there into a quote-unquote lifestyle and allowed it to define you, then it really, you've dug in your heels at that point.
You're exactly right.
And then it becomes very hard to admit that you're wrong because then you would have to change your whole lifestyle, right? So, unfortunately, that's an even bigger barrier once people dig in their heels and they allow a sinful way of living to define them as a person.
Yeah.
Then it just makes them all that much harder to reach, obviously.
Well, here's something very interesting. Have you ever heard of Keira Knightley?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
That's right. I think she did the Beckham movie and all that. Anyway, she says, if only I wasn't an atheist, I could get away with anything. You just ask for forgiveness and then you'd be forgiven. It sounds much better than having to live with guilt.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's true.
So you think she has some guilt?
Obviously she does, or she wouldn't be saying that, right?
Yeah. So your heart really goes out to these folks.
But it is true. You don't have to live with guilt. If you accept Jesus as your Savior, there's no reason to live with guilt.
Right.
So she's absolutely correct.
She was actually saying that in reference to Newt Gingrich. Of course, he's a Republican and he's a Christian, and he's not always been faithful to his marital vows.
Okay.
And
so she was taking a swipe at.
It's kind of a swipe
by saying that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it's just interesting when they start making these comments and when they start speaking out of I reckon out of their heart or out of.
Sometimes they reveal more than they maybe intend to reveal.
I think so, and that's why I love reading these. I don't love reading these quotes because of what they say, but what they reveal, and it gives us more of an idea.
Yeah.
There's a lady, one actress, Julianne Moore. I've never seen The Big Lebowski.
It's like a cult classic movie. I personally also have not seen it, but lots of people swear by it and say it's a great movie.
I hear people talk about The Big Lebowski. I think I looked it up one time and thought, I probably don't need to watch that.
Yeah, I've not seen it.
There's also, she was also in Boogie Nights.
Okay.
All right.
Who is this again?
Julianne Moore.
I don't recognize the name, but go ahead.
Here's what this says. It says, Moore said in a 2015 interview that when her mother died, she became certain about her atheism and her belief that we invented religion as a way to make sense of the world. quote, "I learned when my mother died 5 years ago that there is no there. Structure, it's all imposed. We impose order and narrative on everything in order to understand it. Otherwise, there's nothing but chaos."
Okay. I'm
So
trying,
would she say that if she's an atheist, if she says otherwise there's nothing but chaos, is that her way of saying it's chaos?
well, that kind of brings us full circle back to what we were talking about at the beginning.
I think it really does, doesn't it?
Without God, it's nothing but chaos.
And that's
So
what she's saying.
how can you do science in that situation
Yeah.
if it's nothing but chaos? You
Yeah.
can't. So that's why I said in the debate, the uniformity of nature, the fact that we can do science at all, is extremely strong evidence for the existence of God.
Yes.
Obviously, with this person that I already forgot her name, but clearly there was an emotional hurt there.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of have to wonder, like, okay, did you not know that people die?
Mm-hmm. But it was so close.
Yeah.
So personal.
But so it's clearly an irrational thing that she's doing. Like, oh, well, I was a believer, but then someone close to me died, and so now I can't be a believer? Well, you didn't know that people died before that happened? I mean, it's obviously not a rational thing that she's saying. It's an irrational... She got mad at God, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what happens a lot of times, and people get mad at God, and then they come up with pseudo-intellectual reasons why they allegedly can't believe in God.
You know,
to cover up for the fact that they're really just mad about something.
I know you've been at funerals. You've seen the bodies in the casket.
It's kind of a little bit of an idiosyncrasy of mine, but I kind of don't like to look at the bodies in the casket.
Yeah.
I don't really have a desire to look at it. Because that's not the person, you know.
Right. And you really, when the spirit's taken out of the person,
yeah,
and it's just that body.
When people talk about meat suits, you take a person's spirit out, and that's what you've got left.
And to think about being an atheist and going to a funeral and seeing that body in the casket, it's no longer animated. It's no longer.
It's just an inanimate object at that point.
Yes.
And you can tell the difference.
Yes.
There's a marked difference.
And you know, just right now, when I think if I was an atheist and I went to a funeral and I saw that body laying there in the life force gone, or whatever you want to, an atheist would call it, whatever they would, I don't even know what they call it.
Well, for them, there is nothing to call it because they don't believe that there is.
But the finality, the feeling of finality,
the
feeling of just it's over.
Mm-hmm.
That would be horrific. I
think it is.
My heart
horrific
really
thought.
does go out for atheists, to people who don't believe in God. I mean, to think that that's it. That's just a bad thought.
Well, Phil Fernandez, I like to quote him a lot, and I get a lot of inspiration from him. But he says atheism is a halfway house between Christianity and paganism.
Okay.
And this is the reason that he says it, because he knows atheism is intensely unfulfilling.
Yes.
It doesn't offer anything to people.
Nothing.
And nobody wants to live like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an attractive worldview. So what it really does, it's a halfway house. It's a transition point. Satan uses atheism to drag people away from the truth.
Right.
And then once they get to that spot, they've rejected the truth, but they need something, and then they become very much open to a new solution.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can tie that back in. That new solution. Maybe that's transhumanism. Maybe that's worshiping a one world government system.
Mm-hmm.
And these people that are in this state of believing in nothing, they're ready for any type of hope, whether it be aliens. Right. Extraterrestrials, maybe they've got the hope that we need.
John Kerry made a comment about extraterrestrials at Davos this past week.
What did he say?
Something like it's almost extraterrestrial or something like that, when the select people who have been chosen to try to save the earth. Yeah. Well,
I think a talk about the World Economic Forum is in our future.
I think it's going to be in the very near
future.
Yes.
But the point is, atheists are people that need Jesus. They're hurt.
Yeah.
and they're throwing up an intellectual smokescreen. I think if you watched the debate this past week, you saw that.
Yes.
There were no Taylor did not advance any rational arguments against God. He didn't give us any rational explanation for why he's claiming there's no evidence for God. He, just like I said in the debate, he just simply stubbornly refuses to accept any evidence that you provide.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll stare you in the face and say, I didn't hear any evidence tonight. Yeah. He said that in the debate. I didn't hear any evidence tonight. Well, did you not listen to the 3 evidences? He wasn't able to defeat any of those evidences.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know, I've enjoyed this discussion on atheism as far as you can enjoy a discussion on atheism.
Yeah.
And you look at actual quotes of atheists and you realize there's some stuff going on in their heart that's sad.
Yeah.
And your heart does go out to them. And so if you're an atheist listening to this, we just want to invite you to, hey, email us.
Yeah.
We'll be more than happy to talk with you, pray for you, or listen to you, whatever we need to do. But there is hope, there is help, there is salvation. This world is not the end. There's a life yet to come. There is an eternity. And the way you spend eternity in heaven is through a relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you realize that you have guilt, God's given you a conscience, you have an awareness that there's a God because of creation. And so you realize, hey, there's a creator, there's a God, I'm guilty. And then Scripture says that God sent his Son to die on the cross for our sins. And that if you would be willing to accept what Jesus did on your behalf on the cross through faith, you can be what the Bible calls born again, what the Bible calls saved. You can have that relationship with God. And what's the neat thing is that he puts his Spirit within you. His Holy Spirit comes within you to indwell you. You belong to him. You become part of the family of God. You have certainty of eternity in a place called heaven. So if you've never done that, we would love to talk with you about what it is to be a believer, what it is to be a Christian. There's hope, there's help. You don't have to be in it by yourself. All right. Well, thank you once again for being a part of the Uncensored Pilgrims podcast. And we hope to see you here next week. And I'm Marty McLain along with Paul Price. And we hope you have a great week. And we need to let you know that the views that we express on this podcast belong to Marty McLain and Paul Price. They are our views. They do not reflect the views of anyone else. And with that said, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the podcast.